Come one, come all to Kyle and Nick on Film as we talk about the legendary. Is he beast or is he man? It's Nick.
Oh!
Welcome to Nightmare Alley. Welcome back to the show. I'm one of your hosts, Kyle Goethe from GoatFilmReviews.com.
I'm Nick from the St. Paul Filmcast, and thanks again for watching. Thanks again for finding us, and for our loyal viewers, thank you. Continue to support the show. You can follow the show on Twitter and on Instagram. Today we're going to talk about one of my favorite films of 2021. It's one of my favorite noirs, and unlike this remake, it's Nightmare Alley.
Mm-hmm. Which I did not realize was another adaptation. I thought it was actually a different film with the same title. So I was surprised to find that it was based on the same book. So,
right, yeah.
Nightmare Alley. Stanton Carlyle is an ambitious man with a dangerous past who's found a new home among the residents of a traveling carnival. Stan's ability to manipulate those around him makes him perfect for training as a mentalist. His greed drives him to search for a better life above this station, but his talent for feeding off others lands him in hot water when the false hope that he peddles in goes too far.
Now, one thing about film noirs is people think it's all detectives and murder mysteries and femme fatale, but noir is just simply a style. It's not a genre. Mm-hmm. So I love this story about this being a noir because take place in a carnival. It's a deep underbelly of kind of like almost third-class citizens.
Yeah.
That came out, and noirs came out after World War I. So this is a lot of like people after World War I kind of getting up there, getting the bearings, almost getting back to civilization, but some of them don't really want to be part of civilization. Some of them just want to be part of the carnies, lacklusters, and some of them fall on hard times as well. This is the deep, dark, seedy world. The world after World War II.
When you choose to be on the fringes of society, you miss out on the problems that society has, but you also miss out on some of the ways that a society can help you. And so I think that's why we get people that they're almost always on a tightrope, to use a circus metaphor, where at any moment something could happen that could completely topple their worldview. And that's what almost every character at that carnival is. They are all walking a tightrope, and some of them are tightropes that will collide with each other.
So another trope of noirs is no matter what you do, you are doomed. You are condemned to doomed, and there's really no hope. And this is the pinnacle story of no hope and completely doomed throughout beginning to end, and each and every character.
What part of it does for me though is I wanted doom.
You
Bradley
do,
Cooper's lead character, Stanton Carlyle, is a bad person.
Yeah.
And I think that was something that maybe the trailers hid from us.
Yeah.
Is that he was a bad person. We want him to pay for his problems, and I think that's what I always thought, that noir tends to take a lot of the same elements that like EC Comics would take back in the 50s as well. It's like we follow bad people doing bad things, and we want bad things to happen to them at the end. And I think that's where I felt the fringe of this, is that it feels like a noir film. It also feels like an episode of Tales from the Crypt.
Yes, and that fits for Guillermo del Toro, because this is a little bit like a horror movie. There's a lot of horrific things. I mean, how Ezra Grindo dies is like, oh my god.
It's a bloody movie.
Yeah, very bloody without being like a horror movie. I would know you won't put it in a horror movie, but it's horrific stuff. I mean.
Well, and if you check out, I'll leave the link down in the description. I had a first watch reaction leaving the theater for this yesterday.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
And it was I was very like broken on the movie because it just didn't. I had to think about it for a long time afterwards. So my first reaction to the film is not the one I currently have. And I think part of it was I expect so much like of a fantasy shift to Del Toro's work as a director. He's never made a movie up until now that did not have some sort of fantastical element or even some bit of magic. And I thought maybe when I started to realize that this was another adaptation of the same book as the 47 film, I thought maybe he's going to add something in, some fantastic elements. And I thought he was hitting mysticism a little hard with the tarot cards. And I'm like, are they going to come into play in a different way at the end? Is something different going to happen? And it doesn't. I mean, the film is very realistic and grounded. It's the only film he has that does not have supernatural elements at play, which is funny because it plays with supernatural elements so much throughout the movie, but it's not about that.
I think it's the right time for him because he played so much with monsters and supernatural. And his name is Thomas Lindsay Graham. He wrote the book, and pretty much the subplot of the book, the theme of it is mysticism is not reality. It's all fake. And he went in pages and pages of book about how everybody gets, the tarot cards are all, the whole mysticism behind it is all kind of a fraud. and how even being a mentalist is kind of a fraud. It's a gimmick, it's a gag, and you don't go too far with it. Will Stanton, of course, he's going to go too far with it. It's part of the noirs of stop. No, don't tell me to stop. I'm keep going. Stop doing it. I'm going to keep going.
Yep.
You're right. Even when he meets the psychiatrist, who's one of my favorite characters in noir is Lilith Riller, the psychologist.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I felt a lot of connection to Adam Sandler's character in Uncut Gems, especially because throughout the film we are constantly telling him, back off.
Stop.
Like, please take what you've got. You know, he's a gambler who doesn't know when to walk away with the chips. You know. And I think that's what makes Bradley Cooper's performance in this film so phenomenal. And again, I think it's something nice that Del Toro said about him was he goes, one thing I didn't realize as much going into this film, and I'm paraphrasing here, is that every actor is a director and every director is an actor. And I'm working now with an actor who was a director who understands those elements, and we're able to collaborate a lot more with his performance and how it would be portrayed on the film. And he goes, I've changed the way I'm filmmaking forever, having worked with Bradley Cooper. And you can see that in Cooper's performance is that, I mean, he doesn't speak a line of dialogue for the first 15, 20 minutes.
No, he's absorbing everything, right? He's learning, he's watching and observing. He's almost like part of us, like we're watching it too. Like, what are we seeing here? Even like when the geek leaves and we're all the whimsicals of traveling throughout the carnival looking for the person, we're part of him, right?
Yep.
Where he's the barometer character. There we go, we didn't say it again. But yeah, he also did the dressing, right? His scale, his journey. Like in the middle, he's very, the middle dress, like he's very poor, but then he goes very rich, and then he goes really down.
Yeah, and I think it's funny that when you compare the two halves, because it really is two movies. I mean, the first hour is one movie, and the last hour and a half is another movie. And the film is pretty long. Is that in the first hour, he is trying to hide in the carnival. And the second hour and a half, he's trying to stand out in the crowd.
Or get out, right? Yeah.
You know, he's happy with the way that people look at him at that point. And it's funny because he's trying to escape, I mean, what we assume is a crime that he started the film with.
Right, yes.
You know, is that he's trying to escape that, and then you find as he gets closer, when the police show up, that one moment at the carnival, and he's not afraid to approach them, you start to realize, okay, he's hit a point in his time here where he's not hiding anymore.
Right.
And it's a dangerous
really well.
place. Yeah.
Shot really well with Jim Beaver being the sheriff, who does a really fantastic job.
Yeah, Jim Beaver from Deadwood. Yes. So he gets to do another kind of Deadwoodish sheriff-like character, and I think there's a lot of small, or not small actors, small performances from great actors and actresses that just appear for a moment. Mary Steenburgen in the film has like 2 scenes. She's phenomenal for both of them.
I know. She's the wife of Back to the Future Part 3.
Yeah.
She does a fantastic job. And Richard Jenkins, who looks very, very full. I mean, he's very powerful, looks very menacing, in which completely different from characters we've seen before from Richard Jenkins. Very weakly.
I was going to point that out, actually. I can't think of a Richard Jenkins performance that has been as hard-edged at him recently. He's done some, definitely. Earlier in the career, decades
like The Visitor,
ago. But like we think of movies
Cabin
like
in the
Shape
Woods.
of Water. Yeah, even Cabin in the Woods, though, he's still kind of like, I'm having fun.
Right.
You know, I haven't seen kind of like a rude or hard-edged character since part of the character that he played in 6 Feet Under. Yeah. And it's because his character in 6 Feet Under dies in the first 10 minutes of the show, so most of the time when we see him, it's through other people's interpretations. So the way they interpret him is that he's hard-edged in some moments. But that's not really who the character is. We're just this way we're seeing him. So like seeing him actually portray a downright bad person,
awful
nice.
Person, right?
And the fact that I was waiting for him to show up, and I was waiting for Cate Blanchett to show up, because I remembered, I don't know why, those 2 images struck me in the trailer.
Yeah,
where I was like, where is she? Where is she? In an hour, and I'm like, oh, thank God. And then I'm like, where is he? Where is he? And it takes so long to unfold those because there's so many people jammed in the movie.
Yeah, one of the most interesting characters in noir is the psychologist Lilith Ritter, because she's so sly. Every maneuver she does is, how are you going to react to it so I can interpret it, profile you.
Mm-hmm.
And she fits, oh, you want me to be this? I'll be this. You want me to be this? And she's taking inventory. Everybody does around her, she's taking inventory to maneuver around. She's one of the most cynical, diabolical people, but she does it so charming.
Yep.
She's so wonderful at it. It's so nice.
And she's very woman of science. He's very man of faith. Where like he believes in his ability to play people. And they talk about it like when you do this kind of thing for too long and you get too deep, you start to believe that you are magical.
You believe your own BS. Right?
Yeah, and so he is at a point when he meets her that he is like, no, I've got it. Like I can do this. Whereas she is very, scientific about how can I get him to admit and twist and do these things. It's nice to see that parallel between them.
Yeah. I watched this movie after seeing Spider-Man, and I have to say Willem Dafoe is far more diabolical in this movie than he is in Spider-Man. Now, I know he's doing the Green Goblin. And
Don't you slight him.
But this is very much grounded in reality. This is a person that doesn't mind being evil to make a few bucks.
He is in this movie. He's a real bad person. Whereas in Spider-Man, he's a really bad person. Like, that's the difference.
It's the archetype, exaggeration. I love comic books. I love Green Goblin. He's done horrific things to Spider-Man, but in the Far From Home, and the movie.
I saw No Way Home, Nightmare Alley, and then the trailer for The Northman in like a 2-day period. So I got like all the Willems I'll ever need and more. Willem Dafoe, he's one of those guys now that I actively get excited when I see he's going to be in a movie. I wasn't that way with him maybe 5-10 years ago. Not that he was a bad actor, but like he has had a string of really great performances where he elevates the material. And not to slight what you said about No Way Home, he's better in No Way Home, I think, than he was in the first Spider-Man movie. His abilities have just evolved consistently.
So
even things like him showing up in Aquaman. I was so excited for the scenes he had in Aquaman, few and far between. But I was like, it's Willem on screen again. He has that enigmatic personality, and I think that's he owns his parts of the scene, especially when he describes getting the geek, where it's like, oh, you're a monster, okay.
You
like
are really a monster,
okay,
yeah.
On the same side of that with him is Toni Collette's character, who like she needs to just give her agent a raise because every movie she shows up in is a banger too.
Right, and she doesn't do it. And she does wonderful film acting, which is slight, right? It's not exaggeration. She just slides into the movie. She does things very small that just fits, right? She sees Bradley Cooper. She goes, "You are not good for me, but goddamn it, you are so."
I'm still gonna go for it.
I'm still gonna go for it,
Yeah.
right? And you believe her character. Why is she still hanging out with David? Well, she obviously, without even telling you, obviously this is a broken person that just latch onto somebody, right? And this is how you get recruited into Carnival. You're a broken person, and you're trying to get away from people, trying to get away from society, and then you latch onto this area.
Well, and it's important to know every person joining the circus is a temporary thing. And that's very important to many of the plot beats in the film, is that no one's jumping in for a life in the circus. They're all joining for temporary moments, and that they just kind of be a part of it then. They get sucked in. Even him, they tell him, you can't join up with us at the beginning of the movie, and then they just keep finding uses for him, and eventually he's just there, So he turns from, I'm there for you for the moment, I'm there.
Another person is Ron Perlman, who we've seen, just like Willem Dafoe, he's been peppered into a lot of different other movies, but I think this fits right for his character at the right time. He's playing the old man who's been doing this far too long.
Yep. And this is his 7th collaboration with Del Toro.
Oh, it is.
They're doing the Pinocchio remake next, I believe, and that will be his 8th collaboration with Del Toro.
A live action one?
I'm not sure if it's going to... I thought it was going to be maybe motion capture or an animated one. I'm not sure how to feel. This movie's been in production for a long time.
Isn't he the dad?
I wonder if he'd be Geppetto.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Geppetto.
I would see him as being the guy who recruits Pinocchio to the party scene.
Do all of it, like Peter Sellers and Dr. Strangelove. Just do all three.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's actually the guy that gave the book to Del Toro years ago when they had started working together. He gave him a copy of Nightmare Alley, the book, and that's what started his fascination. Del Toro very much adapted this from the book, didn't remake the movie.
No, he didn't. No, there's a lot of different things.
What he pointed out was that the book is a saga, is what he referred to it as. It is a long book with a lot of stuff going on, and so many different people could adapt this book and pick different shards of what they would focus on, and it would make almost a different kind of movie. Same general idea, but you can make a very different movie with it. And I think that's kind of I would rather have him do that if he's going to adapt something, is adapt something differently than what came before, because this is his first, I guess you could, if you were to classify it as a remake, this is his first delving into previously adapted material.
Because I do love the original, but understand it's built. It's in a soundstage. So you can start. The carnival starts in soundstage, and the beginning of the movie starts with the sheriff coming in town, and that's how you get introduced to the characters. It's like, this is inappropriate. This is indecent. And that's the beginning of the movie with the sheriff coming in. It's like, I'm shutting you guys down, and then you have Stanton selling them off and getting away.
Oh, okay.
Right. Another interesting character is Molly, played by Rooney Mara.
Yeah. We tend to think of Rooney Mara as having this like girl with the dragon tattoo, like where she plays these really out there characters.
But she plays this really
she can
naive.
play like a really young, naive, sweet,
Which is really different for her.
young woman for her. That we don't see her do too often, and she's very convincing in the role. What I like about a lot of these people is that they all, as performers, understand that this is Stan's story. This is Bradley Cooper's story, and they're part of his orbit. Yeah. No one is stealing his thunder during the scenes, which is an important thing to do because he is our character that we're following beginning to end. Yeah. So we need to be able to side with him even when he does horrible things. And the way that she is able to give us information about him as a character, especially after that 2-year jump, she gives us a lot of the information that we get about him through their scenes together.
Well, it's a great, like he does the drawings and like maybe you should do this, and then you understand his creativity. He could really do a masterful artwork, but he's not interested in that.
Well, it's like we talked about Power of the Dog. If he wasn't such a scumbag, he'd actually be a pretty good person.
Pretty good artist, right? You could have your own booth at Carnival selling portraits and and you can make money doing that. And wonderful, carve off a little bit of knife, but he's interested in being grand scale.
Yep.
And use that he's going to use her as a vessel to get it, right? He recruits her. And she's a little naive to the whole game. And of course, I love her little indulgence as chocolate. Mm-hmm. I jumped up and said yes in the theater when he chased her at the train station.
That was you, not
no. But I was like, she better be wearing red. And she was wearing red. I was like, yes! He understands filmmaking. Because out of all the darkness, she's the pop, right? She's the warning.
That's fair.
Yeah.
What I was thinking when, because we spend a lot of time with her as the film goes on, we get a sense of like who she is in relation to him as we do with the other characters. Because he has a lot of females in his orbit.
Oh yeah.
Throughout the film, and he's moving from one to the other quite often. So being able to compare and contrast the 3 female characters that he's directly involved with gives us, again, a lot about him that we get to move in with. And again, that's always what these characters come down to, is how do they tell us more about Stan.
Cinematographer is Dan Lauston.
Mm-hmm.
He did Mimic. We did review Mimic. He also did Silent Hill, which has a lot of faults for a story, but it's shot really well. The fog.
It's a beautiful looking mess.
It's a beautiful looking hot mess of a movie.
Yeah.
But also he did both the Night Watches from Ian McGregor ones, not the ones we did, but the 2 versions, the Swedish one and the 1997 one, Night Watch. We have to talk about that one eventually. But he also did John Wick one, not 1, but 2 and 3, right?
They do 2 and 3. Okay.
2 and 3, and then Shape of Water. So he does really dark really well, almost to the point like, where are their eyes? Oh, that's a little bit there, yeah.
Yeah.
But he shoots illumination like Lilith Riller's office really well.
Yeah, and he also shot another Del Toro film, Crimson Peak, which I criticize Crimson Peak a little bit for bits and pieces of the story, and it's a little bit lossless in its direction. But Crimson Peak, again, looks gorgeous. It's a gorgeous, insane, like, picture of a movie, and that's kind of what a lot of this movie is too. Is it looks amazing.
Yeah.
I like Lauston on here. I don't think he's got any faults with it there. I would say I'm going to pick the guy. I would say I call a little bit of the editing into question in the film, because I don't think the movie needs to be 2.5 hours long.
No.
I felt the length by the end of it. I wish that we were. And the funny thing is, I hate to say it like this, I preferred the carnival half of the movie to the other half. But I also feel like the carnival half could have been trimmed to allow the other half to take over, if you will.
And that's what happens when you do a saga and you got so much.
Yeah, when he said saga, I was like, yeah, I get why the movie was 2.5 hours for him. But
for Guillermo del Toro's taste, he would like to invest a lot more time in the carnival aspect.
Exactly.
The show business, but also a little bit of the grotesque. Have a little fun with that, much more than the grand scale of it, which I probably like invest with. Let's spend more time with tuxedos and suits and drinks and everything. Yeah.
And so I almost wonder to myself if we could have taken bits and pieces of the carnival scenes and put them in as flashbacks throughout the narrative, where they might have been able to aid when they needed to aid. It's sad because, again, I like the carnival stuff more. I was hoping we'd go back to the carnival. As soon as we left, I was like, let's go back. It's not that I have a fault with the rest of the movie. I just want to go back and see more of the carnival stuff. It's such a nice cast of characters throughout, and even smaller performers. Like, again, David Strathairn is not a large character in this movie, but he leaves an imprint and he's wonderful in it. And I wanted to spend more time in the carnival.
I thought he'd be swarmy just like he was in Dolores Claiborne, but he's not. There's a little more. feel sorry for
He's
him.
tragic, and then that's kind of fun because again, just recently we saw him in Nomadland, and again he's a little tragic in that too. But then as well, he also was in a couple of the Godzilla movies that came out recently, and he's not tragic.
He's Pierce Patchett in L.A. Confidential too.
Yeah, so he's got kind of a mixture there as well. I just wish if it came down to cutting time, I would have cut the time that needed to get cut, even if it was at the carnival stage. And I see that too. Del Toro wanted more time at the carnival because that's his thing.
Yeah,
it's his shtick.
I mean, he's got this big monster Frankenstein head in the living room of his house.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
His house is a museum for film.
But that's why, I mean, I feel like they shot the carnival stuff just in his second house. You know about this, right? He has 2 houses. Like,
yes.
He's got a second house next to the first. It's got all the weird stuff. I
read that article. It was a variety, like, come see my house, right?
Yeah, and so I think I would rather say this. If you were gonna, if you have to get rid of something, get rid of part of the carnival stuff, and then allow Del Toro to get a little bit more visceral with the way he shows things. We keep cutting back to like this dreamy moment inside the house as he's burning whatever that body was that he put in the.
Right,
I guess
back
we
to
try
that,
to figure that
yeah.
out. We keep coming back to it in kind of a dreamlike quality. There's that part where he's sitting in the chair and the fire's all around. It didn't actually happen. But we're seeing it like as he imagines it. Go there a little bit. Get a little bit more cerebral. Show us what he's thinking, the dreams he's having, and then you wouldn't have to lose any of that mystical part of the carnival.
Right. It's still my favorite movie of 2021.
Oh, it is?
Yes, it's my favorite movie of 2021. It's a great adaptation to what a noir is. You are doomed, and you have no hope at all. There is literally not even a glimmer of hope in the movie at all for anybody. Right.
Well, and if you want to find out where it sits on my top 10, or if it sits on my top 10 at all, check out St. Paul Filmcast, where I do my top 10 films of 2021. We'll put that link down in the description too. Why don't we?
Yes, definitely.
But overall, yesterday when I came out of the theater, I was like, it's good, but I don't know how I feel about it. Today, I feel a lot more confident that it's a really great movie. It just has some noticeable faults on my end. I think the length, I think the editing, and I think I would have rather had him get a little bit more playful with his Del Toro-isms when he was working on the script. Is put a little bit more of yourself in there, because we see it at points, but I think this is one of the lesser Del Toro movies where he doesn't have his heart in, and his kind of vision doesn't really feel the same in the movie. But it's very well made.
It's a great, but for me, it's a great, thorough adaptation, true to what a noir is.
Yeah.
And yeah, he gave up a lot of his style. A lot of it, like, give up the mysticism of monsters. And let's point the arrow what this film and the adaptation of book of what is really about. It's the rise and fall of Stanton Carlisle.
Yep.
And the real fall. I mean, that is falling.
Yeah, I do wish I had not guessed where the ending was going pretty early on, but I felt in my heart that because I've not seen the other adaptation, never read the book, so I don't know where anything's going in any of those parts. 2 things I got to point out though. One, if you haven't seen the film yet, I would avoid the trailer. I feel like the trailer actually gives away part of the ending pretty heavily. And number 2, it really sucks that so many theaters gave this thing the sidearm when Spider-Man came out, because I actually was planning on going to see this movie 2 days earlier, but all of a sudden when I was getting in my car to go, the screening was gone from my app, and I'm pretty sure they just closed it to put another Spider-Man in. And it was kind of frustrating that this movie I think made opening weekend $22 million compared to its $60 million budget. This movie is going to lose money. It's going to lose a lot.
And
of
sadly,
money.
because it's not a feel good movie.
Yep.
And people are going to watch it and not feel good about themselves.
Yeah, and it's hard too because they shut down for COVID. They had to separate the film, and it sounds like they might have gotten in a good half chunk of the movie, but they had to split it. And it's kind of fun now thinking about these movies, because you're like, can you see where the crack is? Can you see where they stopped filming? The difference in way characters look from scene to scene. Can you see it? But you got to give credit to Del Toro. He wrote an 80-page plan for how we were going to deal with finishing this movie while doing COVID restrictions. You have to respect the man for having the safest possible environment in the film. And then they had to do a lot of the editing in home computers.
As a big noir fan, I really do love this movie. I highly recommend it. If you love noirs, it's a faithful adaptation to what a noir is.
Yeah, I saw your post online about the film before I had gotten in to see it. And after I had seen it, I was like, I wouldn't have needed to see that post. I know Nick would love this movie. It's not a slight, but I know you at this point. Walking out of this movie, I'm like, well, yeah, of course he does.
Femme Fatales, and it's just dark and foreboding, and everybody's doomed. So.
Yep.
Have you seen Nightmare Alley? Have you seen the original?
Yeah.
With
Give us some
Tyrone Power.
preference. Let us know which one you like more. That's the funny thing, is I have heard a great number of people where they're just completely like half of them think the first one's better, half of them think this one's better, half of them think both aren't very good.
I do
adaptations
enjoy
the
both
book.
of them for what they are. I do like old movies. I do like noirs, and this is fits. And it's it's the only noir that's in the carnival.
All right, I'm gonna give you a Thanos snap one out of existence. Which one would you keep?
I would keep the old one.
Okay, but just barely.
Just barely. Just barely.
But let us know down in the comments what you thought about the film, and where does it sit on your Del Toro ranking? I'm still not sure where it really sits on mine because I love so many of the movies he's done. So I'd have to really rejigger things about where I would put them. But that's up to you as well. Let us know down in that comment section. And while you're down there, click the subscribe button so you never miss an episode. We've got episodes coming 3 times a week. And while you're down there too, check out that Patreon. We've got so many available ways that we interact with people. You get Patreon picks on a rotation with the other patrons.
Yes.
You get access to the posts that we put on there. You get access to our monthly show picks with Kyle and Nick, which we are starting with the new episodes this January as well. So you get a lot of exclusive content just for joining, and it helps out content creators like us, and it helps you out too because you're supporting us. But that's all I really got today, guys. Check out my film reviews on GoFilmReviews.com.
I'm Nick from the St. Paul Filmcast, and this is just a temporary job.